This stuff here, Yerushalmi Pesachim, in the article Oz edition, Mamash top of Ayin Bob and Alf, and Nitan Lisol no space of Bechira, and in the Vilna we're on Daf Sama Gimel on the base, the sixth line from the bottom. Nitan Lisol no space of Bechira. So the question is whether this is a new statement or continuation of the previous Gemara. So yesterday we had a Gemara which said that the asked question Tumas Avodah Zara. The last couple of lines in the previous if you're in the article or the previous a couple of lines up on the same moment if you're in the Vilna. Tumas Avodah Zara also so Tumas Nida of Tamei Tzaras. The says Tumas Avodah Zara was made like Tumas Ziva Tumas Tzaras. So on that, the following Gemara, if you learn these lines, one version, which is Likutim Miksav Yad, says it's going on that previous Gemara. It's a fascinating Likutim Miksav Yad in the Vilna, and I'll come to that in a second. The Kormei just takes it out. The Kormei takes out this whole line. Nita Sov Nos Bechir, where it comes out of the left field. He said so. Therefore, so it continues about Tumas Ziva, Tumas Avodah Zara, all these tumas. But according to the and according to other Mepharshim, it's a start of a new story, which will come to in a second. But according to Kuli Miksav Yad, he says a fascinating thing. He says that it really is supposed to be lefanos, not livnos, with a fade, not with a base. He says the derech of the Yerushalmi is to switch a base with a pay. And I think in modern Arabic, they also have this base, pay thing. So they switch them back and forth. So the Aramaic evidently had that issue as well. So it's the way to read it is Nitan so lefanos base of Bechira. If Am Yisrael removed Avodah Zarah from the base of Bechira, there's a whole kind of a discussion in the Yerushalmi, which you're about to see a quote from, when the days of Chizkiyahu, there was Lab Avodah Zarah in the base of Mikdash, I guess from the time of his father, and they took a long time to remove it. And that year, Klal Yisrael did Pesach Sheni, because they found it at the base of Bechira. They moved it, and they were not finished by the time Pesach Rishon came along. And there's a whole description there how they made Pesach Sheni, and they made 7 days of Pesach Sheni, and people came from all over Eretz Yisrael to Yerushalayim, to Israel, even from the land which had previously been land of Asher Shvatim. Whole discussion there, which goes on for a while, and the Gemara is actually going to discuss it for a while. So in any event, so according to him, it's a continuation, right? Nita Yisrael Panos Pesach Bechira, then Yochid also Pesach Sheni, or then Tzibur also Pesach Sheni. Question whether Chizkiyahu did the same thing, right thing, by making Pesach Sheni that year. According to Tanakama, no, because the Yochid can make a Pesach Sheni, a Tzibur can't make Pesach Sheni. He can't push off an entire Tzibur. Then there's the other interpretation, which is the interpretation of several Achronim. Article brings it down as well, which is that it's a new issue. And the question is, if Am Yisrael was given permission to build a Beis HaMikdash between Pesach Rishon and Pesach Sheni, this is in the Kevis HaMishnah, and he calls it Rova Mepharshim. It's a continuation, but it's a new question. Again, it's similar to Avodah Zarah Ziva, but now what about they got permission to build the base in first Pesach Sheni. So Rabbi Yehuda says no, the tzibur is not nichel Pesach Sheni. There's no Pesach that year, and then we're going to have machlekes about this. So the Rabbi Yehuda Tanakama says. You can't make Pesach Sheni. So again, either we have Lefanos Beis Bechira, and it's going back to Avodah Zarah, or you don't have it all, and it's still going to Avodah Zarah. It's going to Spirit, so regardless, could take out that line. Or it's a new issue. What about if we talked about Tumas Ziva, Tumas Saras? What about Am Yisrael wasn't Tamei, but they got permission to rebuild the Beis HaMikdash between Pesach Rishon and Pesach Sheni? So the Gemara says, Yochid Oisa Pesach Sheni, Vein Tzibur Osim Pesach Sheni. You can't put Tanakama says you can't push up the Tzibur Pesach Sheni. We find Chizkiyahu. Inappropriate. Rabbi Yehuda Mer Tzibur Osim Pesach Sheni. No, Tzibur does make Pesach Sheni. She came at Tzibur Chizka. We find this all in Chizka. Shasa Pesach Sheni. It's made Pesach Sheni. Hadog Dichsiv. Is that what it says? I'm not sure why they chose this specific pasuk from. It goes on from much of the two prakim there, and the very Yomim Beis Chavtas and Lamed. Ki Marbisa Am Ephraim Menashe V'Gomer. Because most of the people from Ephraim and Menashe, etc., and there is the Moshe speaks about this at great length. Also, he says here that well, here, of course, Tzibur does Pesach Sheni, and we're talking about this year initially. Chizkiah wanted to push up to making the Pesach by Ibur Shana, by making an extra leap month, and it didn't work. I guess didn't work still to make the Skogi here in Sanhedrin, right, about whether that Ibor was a proper Ibor or not a proper Ibor. We're going to talk about that. But in any event, they tried and it didn't work. I guess they were not able to make themselves start by time Pesach came along, and therefore they made Pesach Sheni. Okay, that's when they're going to go over to discuss the issue of Ibor. So but in any event, we find here Chizkiah did the Pesach Sheni for the Tzibur, either because not because of Tumas Avodah Zarah, and then so the question is again is a continuation of previous sugya, and we're saying that this issue is the machlekes is a question whether Chizkiah did the right thing or not, or according to the issue of according to the interpretation that it's a new issue, leaving us space of chira, or bringing a raya from the case of Chizkiah that whether tzibur is nidcha, not tzibur nidcha, whether that was appropriate thing to do or not appropriate thing to do, and for that you would learn also too the question of when the Beis Hamikdash was built between Pesach Rishon and Pesach Sheni. Okay, East Tani, there are those who say Abrin, and this sugya is a great length in the Yerushalmi Pesachim. He has just brought down relatively short, just in order to, because of what's relevant to here in Pesachim. But East Tani, Tuma, that you do Ibur Shana on account of Tuma, and they not going to be able to Pesach in time. East Tani, you can't do Ibur Shana on account of Tuma. So, Madamar Ma'abrin es Hashanah, here the Korban takes out the word Ein. I wonder if the article takes that. Let's check. So yeah, it takes out Ein in the actually in the text itself. Takes out the word Ein. So, but and I want to just say a couple words before we actually inside, which is in Divrei Yomim there, Perek Lamed, it says several times they made Pesach and the Chodesh Hasheni. The Chodesh Iyar. So obviously, at the very least, the Tanakh is not happy that they that they tried to make the Ibur, or it failed altogether and they didn't make the Ibur. Right? It's the the Gemara is saying that they did make the Ibur, right? But it was the Tanakh is saying this is not a good Ibur. It was not appropriate. So and that's he says here. Even though it says in Chodesh Hasheni, they're learning the Psukim. Chizkiah made keep me on base on Rishon because he tells we made Ibur year this year, and therefore this is Nisan really. And the pasuk say no, you didn't make Pesach Rishon, made Pesach Sheni. But amen does sound from the psukim that the Chizkiah was trying to make Pesach Rishon because it says he made a 7-day yontif. So in any event. So the Gemara says, "Man What was the problem? The Chizkiah tried to make it Ibur Shana. The Ibur Shana worked, and therefore they were eating the Pesach the proper time. It was Nisan. She was Nisan. He says no. They made a second Nisan. The Adar. So they say that it was the Pesach Sheni, and they made the Pesach Rishon by making a double month of Nisan that year, and we don't do that. We only make one month of Nisan. Of Asa Kai the Mar Rabbi Simon Bar Zavdi, it's going like the opinion that Rabbi Simon Bar Zavdi that Gugolosu Arnon Hayavusi Motzutachas is back. When they were renovating the Beis Hamikdash back then, they found the skull of Arnon, the Jebusite, who was the one who sold Ravna, is called in different places. That they found his skull under the Mizbeach. Now, the Yifei Naim in Sanhedrin Daf Yud Beis asks from the Yerushalmi and it sounds like they only found this skull much later in the times of Ezra. So So the Yerushalmi Pesachim says it doesn't mean they specifically found his skull back then times. Because it's a dogma, it's an example. But the point is that it was tumas mace and not tumas avodah zarah, because they found this tuma in the Beis Hamikdash, and therefore that according to this man the Omar, who holds that they were ma'aber and they made a second Nissan. Why did they make a second Nissan? Why just make Pesach Sheni? So the answer is because it was tumas mace, and tumas mace, everybody agrees that it should be too much of a tzibur. So you can't make Pesach Sheni because they had they should have made Pesach Rishon B'Tumah. It's only tumas mace, not tumas avodah zarah. So therefore, if that was the case, that's why they had to make Bima Aber the year in order to make it not Pesach Sheni, but to make Pesach Rishon in their second Nissan. Okay, and it was inappropriate because Shaloko it was the pasuk says that it was how was the pasuk? It was a peculiar Pesach below Kosov, right? Because they should have made Pesach Rishon B'Tumah, but they didn't. They made for whatever reason they decided not to, and it could be because of the avodah zarah as well. But that's the point why it couldn't have made Pesach Sheni, had to make the second Pesach Rishon. Okay, now we're going to go back to the shita that it was tumas avodah zarah. Okay, so the Gemara says, "Ksiv v'achelu v'achol chodesh rishon l'kadesh." They started being Mekadosh on the first day of Nisan, and also on the 8th day of Nisan. I guess they redoubled their efforts or something. The pasuk's solution is Hashem. So I guess they went gradually further in. Hashem and took another 8 days. So only finished being Mataret. So the Gemara asks, why it takes so long? So they could have been all the Avodah Zarah, which was there in one day. Why it takes so long? Okay, I'm not sure the Gemara knows that, but the Amar Rav Idi, he said Tzalmi Kasdim, because of the Tzalmim of the Kasdim, which were Shuchakukim b'Sheshar. They were carved in with Sheshar, some sort of evidently permanent fixture. Karmei says some sort of some sort of secret code or hidden writing. It says took a lot of checking. According to Moshe, it means they're very, very strongly engraved. They're very hard to get out. And anyway, I just want to point out before I go on that this goes back to what we said before, that assuming that the sugya was continuation to Avodah Zarah. So then there's a question: the Avodah Zarah, are you nidcha pesach, not nidcha pesach sheni? It depends whether we learn Chizkiel did the right thing or not. And according to that man, the Amar wasn't that they made a second Pesach, a second Nitzan, but they made Pesach Sheni, and Shalok HaKosav would mean that for Avodah Zarah you don't push off the people of Pesach Sheni, because Yochid Nidchen ain't Tzibur Nidchim, and that was Shalok HaKosav. Okay, so now the Gemara says, it says, Kol v'yichin lidrosh Elokim Hashem Elokei B'Sof. Chizkiel did everything the right thing. He prepared his entire heart to quest after Kodesh Baruch Hu, like the God of his forefathers. So the end of the pasuk says, cryptic, and the pasuk. Look at Taras HaKodesh. Moshe says, "V'lo Taras HaKodesh, pli abam mai v'lo Taras HaKodesh." Now we have machlokes. What does it mean v'lo Taras HaKodesh? Okay, so the Rabbi Simon Bar Zavdi, Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachmani Chadmar, afilu so kama v'Taras HaKodesh lo yotzei deito Taras HaKodesh. So the Shmuel says he made several Taras HaKodesh. Wasn't enough. Apish also kama takanos. They several takanos. The Torah Taras HaMikdash Kodesh, or the Taras Kodesh. Kom lo yotzei deito also garment Taras HaKodesh. Even though this it says Midan Bad Beersheba, nevertheless, you could never. It's never enough. You can never fully fulfill the parameters. Taras Kodesh is a very hard thing to attain. Said, I feel he says the great way Pinosh that's come Taras Kodesh lost a klum. The Chol didn't Taras Kodesh do anything. But he did as good everything else. But Taras Kodesh didn't do anything. Yeah, it's strange because all the psukim there about how he tried to be Matayr the Beis Hamikdash. But okay, I guess. Because the first man number he made a tremendous effort, but it's together. Because the second man number he didn't make that big an effort, but he did fantastic things in other Maisim Tovim. Cormier says that similar thing. He says he didn't do could have done more. Of course, the person's opinion, he tried his best. Of course, I didn't quite try his best, but he did everything else great. I was looking up this just now to see what the other Farshim say. So I saw in Far Yerushalmi, my cousin brings down about that before. It actually is a pasuk. Pasuk in Yechezkel. I don't know, nobody brings down the pasuk. Yechezkel, Parachav Gimel, except for the Far Yerushalmi. Parachav Gimel pasuk Dav. Tosefot has Nuneh Vatera Anshe Mechukel Akir Tzami Kasim Chakuki B'Sheishar. So there was actually it's a pasuk. Okay. Back to Gemara. Shisha Dvar Masir Chizkiel Melech Yehuda, the 6th day, the Chizkiel did. Ashlosha, we learned this previously. Ashlosha Hodulo, Ashlosha Lodulo. 3 they conceded him, and 3 did not concede him. He destroyed the Nachash which Moshe Rabbeinu made. Vodlo, and they conceded him. They like that. He took his father Ochaz, who was very wicked, bones after he died, and dragged him to the length of the street on a rope bed. Vodalon, they like that. Ganas the tablet of fools, he took the tablet of fools, famous Sokas Ramban, who was voodoo fools, according to Rambam, called real fools, according to Ramban, in order to get people to have more have more technical Baruch Vodalo, and they conceded put that as well. These are the ones that did not concede. He cut off the losses of the Beis Hamikdash, and he sent it to the which king it was, the king of Ashur, to save Yerushalayim, and they did not like that. So he closed off the opening to the Gichon spring, and took on the water, the Me'er Shilach. Below the low, they did not concede it on the ground. Sorry. To the Me'er Shilach. Below, they did not like the fact that he sealed the roof out, that people outside Yerushalayim couldn't get to the water. The Iber Nisan, and he attempted to make Nisan a leap month in Nisan below Dulo. And they did not concede that point to him as well. And the question is whether actually he did make it a second Nisan or didn't work, and it may place Hasheni. That's the whole discussion which we had today. So we have the Tibur, which was half Tamei Ziba and half Tamei Mace. So it wasn't a majority. It was 50-50. So nobody is Torah. So therefore, the Pesach does, even though it's only half of the Tibur, therefore the Chorah say Pesach Kumo Tumo is only if it's majority. But here, since the other people also tell me just not the right type of tumah, so therefore the Zavim vis-a-vis the Tmei Mace are Ketmeim Eitzotarim, are like Tmeim Eitzotarim. Now you have to change the gears here somehow or another. The easiest way is to change it like the Yerushalmi Kipshuto. Others change it much more. The Chaim, the art scroll, but he just changes the next word in Einon to Tmeim. So Tmeim Osim, the Tmeim do Pesach Rishon. Zavim Nidchin Pesach Sheni. The Zavim push out the Pesach Sheni. Avura Amar, no. Ain't Tashlumin Pesach Babatuma. If the Pesach is Babatuma, there is no Tashlumin. Pesach Sheni is for when the Pesach Rishons did B'tara, and the few didn't do Yichim weren't able to do it, so they do B'tumah. They do Pesach Sheni. But here, in other words, since Pesach Rishon do B'tumah, so therefore there is no Tashlumin of Pesach Sheni. Okay, see, Tzibur Ruban Torah, the Tzibur was majority Torah, the minority was Tameh. Made, but okay, so far it seems so good, right? So normal Pesach. Mesu min hataha b'yotam ben shkita lezrika. So now they died. The people who were Torah died between the shkita and the zrika. And now the majority of Tamei. So achar miyad mahalik. What determines whether the Pesach is above a tumah or not? Achar shkita achar zrika. Do you follow the shkita after zrika? Intem achar shchita. If you're going to say you go after shchita, at time shchita, the majority return. So it's a mituma. They can't do Pesach mituma that year. Intem achar zrika. Then at the majority time is zrika. The majority were tamei. So it's a mituma. Would do it mituma. Okay. What about another scenario? How you tibu ruben tameim? The majority of tamei. And the majority were tamei. So you would do with that year Pesach mituma. And then the Tmein died between Shechita and Zrika, and therefore now you have a majority of Torah. What do you follow? Achar Shechita, Achar Zrika. Do you go after Shechita or Zrika? Tema Achar Shechita, you go after Shechita, or Simituma, because at that time the majority of Torah. In Tema Achar Zrika, if you go after Zrika, Eino Simituma, you don't do a Bituma, because at that point the majority of Torah, and of course the Yerushalmi does not. Halacha base. What's going to be derech choika? I mean, the Modi is the chutz. Everybody changes to Modi'in, which is probably approximately where the modern city of Modi'in is. From that area beyond, and you do the same distance all around Yerushalayim. Divrei Rabbi Akiva. The Elazar says no, it's not. No, Me'eskupas Azor chutz. Once you're outside special Azor, that's where you see the derech choika. Rabbi Yosef said, "Nakud al hay." There's a nakuda on the hay in the word rechaika, and every nikud comes to preclude something, to exclude something, and that Lomar comes to tell us "Lim rechaika vadai," not to tell us you have to be definitely distant to Yerushalayim, which would be like Modi'im, but Elam is Kubas Azar Lachutz. But even right outside the threshold of the Azar is where you consider to be the derech rechaika. So Pnei Moshe brings down, like the Gemara says later on, we'll say later on, that the Darshan, as if there is no hate, to say Rechoka and suppose Rechoka, so it's going on the Gavra, not on the Derech. So saying that as long as the person's distant, even though the Derech is not a far distance, the coolest shot is the Korban Eidah second shot here. Korban Eidah second shot says, V'yesh fortunately Josh Rechoka, hey Amos. Rachok hey, people ain't rachok me. Skubas azar el hey amos uvad. Besov hakrovas korban nidam kibedin derech choika. So I don't know, maybe that skoipa itself was 4 amos away, and if it was 5 amos outside, but I don't know. Going this Yossi should say 5 amos away from that skoipa. But it's very cool that he dashes the word hey to say 5 amos. Okay. Rabbi Simon and Amar, Simon said, "Ispalgon Rabbi Chia Rabba Bar Kapara." So my relative Rabbi Chia the Great and Bar Kapara Chadamar Kadesh Yovo Yochal. So Korban says, "Kosh Yochal Above Shas Achilo Dainu Kol Alaylo Ad Chatzos Lo Avlev Derech Choika." Anytime you could get there during the time of the Korban is supposed to eat, that's not called Derech Choika. The other said, "Kidei sheyavo ve'yizrok," that anybody can get there, not taking account of traveling at night, but rather says Korban Ashkis Achama. That's able to get there by Ashkis Achama. That's considered to be that he wasn't by B'derech Choika because he could have gotten there during the time of the Avodas HaKorban. Even though he doesn't have to be there actually, but he could have gotten there during the time of the Avodah. But it says when I feel Kidei sheyavo yochal, there's a limit. In other words, it's not he could traipse around as far as he could just walk after Shkia, but Bushia b'toch alpayim l'tchum ad shelo chashecha. It's interesting because, of course, that's Tchum is only the Rabbanan, so, but he's saying that, well, Rabbanan were not around to come, he was more 2,000 almost away from Yerushalayim. So therefore, the Derech Choka is, according to this opinion, up to be anywhere beyond 2,000 amos, because already you can't come until after Yontif is over, because it's Tchum Shabbos, Tchum Yontif. Says Amar Bezira, according to the other opinion, of course, that was Modin and Chutz, or Mezivit Tani Tamar, we lost on the Brisa there, and Chutz and Bavel. I also mean how to Modi's belief name if you were inside the area from Modim, Raglav rose, but you had bad legs. Yochi, and he couldn't make it. Yochi Chayiv Tamar Chadal, says somebody who was desisted from making the Korban Pesach. It's Lashon Pasuk is. Oh, he doesn't bring down Lashon Pasuk here. Oh, he does. So it says Chadal Yatz Zesh Lo Chadal. So that he didn't desist. He couldn't make it. So conversely, it doesn't mean this chutz even some modim and beyond modim. But sus biyado, he has a horse. Yochi Chayiv is Chayiv because he couldn't make it because he had a horse to get there in time. Tamar derech lo haya. He was if he was not far distance. It's a but derech. So suppose this person who was on the derech, in other words. The Metzias, he was too far away from Shemaim, because the derech was a distant derech, even though he was not distant. Okay, so even though he himself couldn't make it because he had a horse, since the derech was distant, so therefore he is exempt. Now the price goes on, but already on Omid Aleph, so I guess we'll stop here for today.